Doors in a series. Nothing's changed about the doors in a series. It's still the 48 inches, okay, in dealing with that. Now, they've added this piece down here at the bottom. The bottom of the door is going to be flat for the bottom 10 inches. Because here's what the average chair user does. They use their foot pedals or stuff like that to hit a door. So, a recommendation, put kick plates on there. Because people are going to be, they're hitting the doors. Just think about it and do it. If you have a vision light, you got to be able to see through it. Okay, so you got to think about the height like that, and there is a maximum of 43 inches at that vision side light by that door. Exterior doors. It has been my recommendation to you to consider. If you're doing a governmental building, consider power activating the doors. There is no requirement for it, but it's just a benefit. I want you to think about most of your grocery stores that you go to, and a lot of the malls. What do? They power activate the doors. Why? Because I've got my hands full of goodies, and I can go right through and the door pops right open. It's a good thing to do in governmental buildings. I think it is, and things like that. Is there a requirement for it? The answer is no, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, when you're spending $40 million, it's not a lot of dollars more. Yes?
Does this preclude the use of a narrow style storefront door?
No. Is that 10 inches? The question is about that 10 inches for the glass door. You can still do the glass doors. You can still do that. Yes. Controls. They've now clarified if you're going to power activate a door, where it needs to be and how far away from the door so you don't hit the panel and the door hits you when it opens up. Which kind of makes logical sense. You know, just be out of the way to do that. Okay? Just get me out of the way so I can hit the panel, the door opens up and just go boink and nail me. Okay. Entrances. Communication devices must have both visual and audible signals. How many times have you gone up to a door panel and you've seen this, you know, you got to hit the keypad to get in or something like that. And if it talks back to you, it's got to be audible and visual. Just can't be one piece. Security barriers. Go through an airport. You know, what do? They have a bypass lane for people in wheelchairs, for chair users. So for access in dealing with that. Walking surfaces, as I alluded to earlier. Your path of travel can narrow down to 32 inches for a length no greater than 24 inches. So here's what they're telling you. I can kick it down to 32 inches for 24 inches. And now they've also said, if you want to keep doing this little detail, you need a gap of at least 48 inches minimum between these little pilasters or whatever you want to call them to do that. Because some people were playing games with this. You know, 1 inch and da-da-da-da. Got crazy. Best thing to do, just kind of keep your hallways 36 inches wide. Actually make them bigger. Surfaces, change in level. You can still do the 1/4 of an inch. If you go to a 1/2 inch, it's a 1 and 2 bevel. Nothing's really changed there. Surfaces, firm, stable, and slip resistant. Gravel is not an acceptable surface. Dirt is not an acceptable surface. They need to be slip resistant. Okay, you can't have a highly polished floor. Even though you might want to take your shoes off and run across it with your socks. Do a Tom Cruise? No. Got to be slip resistant. Ramps. Maximum slope of a ramp is 1 to 12. We recommend, if you're doing a new project, consider 1 to 16. Because I promise you, if you put it on your drawings at 1 to 12, there's going to be a problem out there. It's just the nature of the beast of people building this stuff. I'm going to give you my 30-second speech about construction tolerances. When you design a project, please, please build in construction tolerances. Don't torque everything down to the minimums. For some reason, I have no idea why, handrails, we show them, the code says 34 to 38. Nobody wants to put them at 36 on a stair. They always put them at 34, I see a lot of times on the drawings. I don't know why. Put them at 36, you're right in the middle. Ramps, like same thing with that. Handrail height. The width, 36 inches. Give yourself like 38. Give yourself a little breathing room. Slopes, 1 to 12. Give yourself a little extra. We worked at one facility and the whole game plan was at that facility we determined for that whole campus everything is going to be 1 to 16. If you're in new construction, there's no reason why you can't do it. You can make it work. Cross slope, 1 to 48. Used to be 2%. Now it's 1 to 48, which is really 2.08%. Why did we go to 1 to 48? Because in construction, everybody understands a 1/4 inch per foot. So that's what that new number is. So deal with that. But build in your numbers to make sure it covers that. On ramps, you got the handrail extensions, which we'll show too. Also, this X, the distance here cannot be greater than 4 inches. And if you don't want to do that, you can also take these out on the side of the walkways, 12 inches minimum. Because the issue is walkers, crutches, and canes can slip out. That bottom rail stops that. If you put the posts too far apart and you're a chair user, you go off the ramp. And that becomes a problem. The diameter of the handrail, again, that 1.5 inches, the nominal, but now it's a minimum for this distance between here. You've got some alternate shapes that you can do if you want to get into it. You need a handrail that you can grasp and grab onto, like the one on the right here. Now this also says, handrails must comply where provided along walkways. This is something new. So now I'm in a medical facility, we got all those crash rails on the side, they've also made them handrails, right? Because of people walking up and down the corridors. So those handrails along a corridor condition in a hospital environment, they need to be made compliant. Curb ramps. Slope, 1 to 12 maximum. Flared sides, we're talking about 1 to 10 on that. The return sides, you can just do it straight if you want to, or you do the flares. If you're doing the flares, you're going to do a 1 to 45. At the top of a curb ramp, then now I've clarified it, that you need a 36 minimum path to travel. Because the issue is, and where did 36 come from? The minimum 36-inch path to travel. Because a lot of people would take this curb ramp that's here and stop do it all the way to the back end of the sidewalk, which that means you got a cross slope problem trying to walk the sidewalk. So you don't do the curb ramp like this, you do a parallel curb ramp. You come in flat and slope up on either side. Okay, as you can see, this becomes a little bit of a challenge. No place to turn. The detectable warnings, as I mentioned earlier, they're gone, except on highway issues. So, this is for the department, this is proposed right-of-way guidelines. This curb, if you do a curb ramp, you do detectable warnings, they only need to be 24 inches, again, on the highway side. You don't need the full depth of the curb ramp. Go to the Access Board's Government ADA webpage, and they got a whole section on detectable warnings and talking to you about that. You want to see what needs to be done. Now, if you go to a job site and you go to a facility and you see this, you know you got a problem. Okay, a little bit steep on the ramp, a little bit of a challenge to get out of here. I guess you kind of line up your chair in the grooves and down you go. Okay, no, that doesn't work. A piece of plywood with an accessibility logo, that doesn't work either. This was just scary, just absolutely scary. Here's a facility that we happen to do measuring on. There's that slope meter over there. Okay, handrails need to be on both sides. Obviously the slope is no good. It's just non-compliant. Now I do need to let you know, in benefit of this client here, they've torn out this whole front of this facility and it's all now been modified to be accessible. Handrails stay in the direction of travel. They do not turn 90 degrees. And they've made that clear in the new 2012 Florida Accessibility Code. So the secret about this is, you can do this if you want, but you can just stop them right there. Because this is a ramp coming up to a sidewalk. Now if you stuck these handrails out in the sidewalk, now you got everyone walking down the sidewalk getting blasted. So, just stop the railing. Here's a brand new facility. We're measuring it. Designer has gone, turn the handrails at 90 degrees at the bottom. No. But he did the same thing at the top too. Now, this is brand new construction, folks. Non-compliant. You kind of like this one. I'll get you up so far, and that's as far as you can go. Then you run into a bunch of steps. My favorite. One of my favorites. I guess if you paint it blue and put the accessibility logo on it, it must be okay. No, don't do this. Please don't do this. Elevators. Got a bunch of different choices on elevators and dealing with things. Car sizes, we're talking about what to deal with the car sizes and dealing for access. Standard elevators are alterations where one car is altered, all cars programmed to respond to the same hall call must be altered. Basically, you're going to be fixing them up. LULA, which is limited use, limited access elevators, where a standard elevator is not required, i.e., under the federal law, you're not required to have an elevator in a two-story building. In Florida, you need vertical accessibility. Now, you can do it by a ramp, or you do it by an elevator, but you could do by a LULA. I would recommend you just put the real elevator in new construction. LULAs are smaller, and they're I'm not really comfortable with them yet. Put the real elevator in, but you can do that if you want to in Florida. And there's some private residence elevators in dealing with it. Platform lifts are allowed in performance areas, speaker platforms, judicial spaces, the witness stands, judges' benches, and existing site constraints where you can do a platform lift. Chapter 5, let's talk a little bit about parking. Parking. Sign height is 60 inches to the bottom of the sign. Van spaces outside of Florida, van spaces used to be 1 for every 8. Now it's 1 for every 6. They want more van spots. And if you angle van spots, you can only put the access aisle on the right side. Also, just to let you know on the federal requirements under the federal law outside of Florida, accessible parking space for vans are 11 and 5, not 8 and 8. The reason they changed it to 11 and 5 is we found out throughout the country, when you do an 8-foot parking space and an 8-foot access aisle, people would park in the 8-foot access aisle. Striped or not striped, it just visually, I can sneak my car in here. So the feds have gone to 11 and 5. Parking, just look at the count. All you got to do is look at the numbers and tells you how many. Now, the big thing they changed is this. The number of accessible parking spaces required to be accessible is to be calculated separately for each parking facility. The required number is not to be based on the total number of parking spaces provided in all of the parking facilities provided on the site. That's going to change your numbers depending on how your site plan is. So if you got a parking garage, you got site parking, you do the count for the garage, you do the parking for the site. So just be careful of this little section, which is 208.2, dealing with the minimum number. Changes your numbers big time. Again, the federal law, van spaces 1 out of 6. Florida, they're all van spaces. This is the old requirement under the old law. This is what the new requirement is on the right side. Okay? We recommend you take a look at this for accessible parking spaces. Do a parallel curb ramp. Come in flat and slope up on either side. It's cleaner, it's nicer. You don't get all with the funky curb ramps and everything else and dealing with that. Here's a drawing showing that. The accessible parking to meet Florida and the federal requirements. Florida law says you shall diagonally stripe the access aisle. Doesn't tell you what color. I recommend you do it in white. Depends on what college you want to. You could probably pick college colors if you like, but think about doing it in white. Florida says you shall outline the parking spaces in blue. So, you do the parking stripe from the center line of the white stripe to the center line of the white. That's your 12 foot. And then the blue stripes go inside, 4 and 4. Because your local zoning code normally tells you your parking spaces are 4-inch wide striping. Now, in certain jurisdictions in the state of Florida, they require double striping. There's no place out there that tells you how to identify and how to do that parking for accessible parking spot. So we've got a drawing for that for you. When you look in the zoning code, it will tell you measure your parking spots from the center line of the double stripe to the center line of the blue stripe. So, center line here to the center line with the access aisle, that gives you your 12 feet. I like this idea, you do half blue and half white. Only to give the guy who's painting the striping, can he really do it? Don't get hung up if he doesn't do it. I mean, if he wants to take the blue all the way across, that's okay too. But, you know, let's give the guy who's painting the stripes a challenge. You know, something to do. Now, be aware, the feds have said this. When a business, state, or local government agency or other covered entity restripes a parking lot, it must provide accessible parking spaces as required by the standards for accessible design. Failure to do so would violate the federal law. So when you're restriping a parking lot, you need to make it accessible. Okay? Let's look at some accessible parking. That's too much blue. You really don't need to do this sea of blue. When they said outlined in blue, this is not what they had envisioned. Okay, so that's a little too much. This is kind of scary. There's a ramp in the entire access aisle. The only thing left to do to this parking lot is to paint it, which means this has been approved. So the owner thinks it's okay. Someone's going to come by and get this guy. Just non-compliant. There's no requirement to paint the curb ramps and these things blue. You don't put handrails on curb ramps. And the parking space and the access aisle is all supposed to be level. And there's no requirement to paint the curb stops, the wheel stops, blue. Just leave them white. And again, that's why we don't like it to be in blue here, because at night they tend to disappear on you. Do it in white. It makes it nice and clear. Here we'll just keep painting everything blue. Now we have this curb ramp on steroids out here. Here's a bigger curb ramp on steroids. Bleeds into the accessible parking spot, just all non-compliant. This is new construction, folks. This is 2 years ago. This is just scary, okay? I guess if we just keep putting logos on everything, everything looks okay. Non-compliant. We'll do blue, we'll paint things blue, we'll put detectable warnings up, we'll do everything. Don't need to do the detectable warnings. You don't need 90% of this blue at all. The only blue you need here is the striping for the parking spots. Please try not. No, I don't even try not. Just don't do this. Here's an accessible parking spot with an access aisle. And in the access aisle is the drainage grate. No, that's not where you put the accessible parking. Don't do that. You've got some poles, interesting poles in the access aisle here. Don't do that. What more can I tell you? A speed bump in the accessible parking spot. Now you got to really look at it. The speed bump got put in over the logo. One of my favorite slides. This is in a parking garage, folks. This is a dead level parking spot. But I want you to look at the handrails. They are beautiful. You've got a guardrail at 42 inches. You have a handrail at 36. You have the extensions on either side. You have the edge protection at the bottom so you don't fall into the parking spot. Every time you think you've seen it all, you don't. It's out there. So please, if you can, at the very beginning you saw my email address. If you find this out there someplace, send it to me. You'll be part of the next presentation. This is just scary, absolutely scary. And someone said it had to be done. Okay, here we are. I'm taking my buddy Todd fishing. He gets out of the car, into the water. No, just think a little bit ahead of time. This is 2 accessible parking spots, okay? Think that one's a good one? You're gonna love this one. Here they are. They're parking in the access aisle. Now look at the wheels though, they're great. They're not even on the stripes. They're right in the access aisles. I want you to know in today's time in smart cars, you could probably turn this into a giant parking lot, one parking spot. I love this one. How long do you think it will be before they realize where the vehicle is parked? Okay, here's the truck. They're wrapping up the work. I want you to look at all the bollards around the perimeter. They have blocked in the truck. There's no way they're going to get that truck out of there. Passenger loading zones. At least one for every 100 linear feet of loading zone space is provided. Obviously, you're looking at something like this. Guess what this is? This is an airport. So now under the current law, every 100 feet, you build a new facility dealing with that. Passenger loading zone, you need the access aisle to show it, and dealing with that, the area needs to be marked. So just be aware when you're dealing with passenger loading zones. Stairways are covered now. 4, only all stairs that are part of a means of egress. Under the old code, you had a requirement for the handrail extensions, 12 inches plus 1 tread. But there was an exemption for stairs. What they did is they put back into the law, only for the means of egress stairs, you need the handrail extensions. So, little subtle change, but just be aware of it. And it's only 12 inches. Chapter 6, dealing with plumbing elements and facilities. One of my favorite sections. Okay. Drinking fountains. The law now says you need a high one and a low one. There's no way getting around it. There's no alternate solutions. You need a high, you need a low. Where we used to have a thing of other alternate means, where some people would put a cup dispenser, that's gone. They've taken a lot of these things out of there, and they've clarified that. So you need to do that, and 50% of each type must be accessible. You need a forward approach, and they now put a height requirement for the high one. Okay? Access to at least 50% of single-user toilet rooms clustered in one location that serve the same users. And like I said, that was the bit when we saw that slide much earlier. Here's that office again. Example, the medical office suite. Ooh, let's go back. Again, I've got this group of them. I need half of those. I got this group over here. I need half of them. But they got to be in lines of sight. You just can't go, I got them all in this giant office and you can't see them. You got to be able to see each one. Private toilet rooms needs to be adaptable. And you got to go through the sections of the codes and dealing with what you need to do. You don't need the high toilet, you don't need the accessible lab, but you got to be able to fix it and change it out to make it accessible. And this private bathroom is really in a private office. It's not like an office, and it's only the staff bathroom. New construction, need to make it compliant. Big change, like I talked about at the very beginning. The 1991 standards, we had that 3 feet from the sidewall to the edge of the lab. The new 2010 and the Florida Accessibility Code, it's now 5 feet, 60 inches. They've also added one other thing. The requirement for this door. If you remember, the door could not swing into the clear floor space of a fixture. Well, now it can swing into the clear floor space of a fixture if you have a 30 by 48 inch clear floor space box outside of the door swing. So if you look on the photo on the left, notice the door cannot swing in further than the clear floor space required by the toilet. Under this one, notice the door is swinging into the clear floor space of the toilet, but there's a 30 by 48 inch box outside of the door swing. The whole logic for it not swinging into the clear floor space of a fixture was you would hit somebody. If it's a single user toilet room, there's nobody you're going to hit. It's only you going in there. So they said, give me the clear floor space beside it. Okay? So here we are, coming into that single user toilet room. Coming in. Parking. A lot of people take that chair, they bring it back into here, do it, lock it down, and then scoot across. All right? Turn, do whatever they need to do, get back out, head on out, get room to turn around, wash up, open the door, and they're out. Now notice this door swings in, which means I need 18 inches clearance on the pull side of this door, so you got to be careful of this dimension so that lavatory doesn't get into that clear floor space area, because that would be blocking it. Okay, here's the old one, single user. We can no longer do that. But if it was compliant with that to start with, you're okay. Remember, you've met the safe harbor of the 91 standards or the old Florida Accessibility Code in dealing with that. So these two figures are gone from the old code like you saw. Again, basically it's a 60 by 60 inch box by the toilet. Think about that is what you need to have clear. The toilet, 16 to 18, recommend make it 17 inches for yourself. Just start doing it right now at 17 inches. That gives you that side transfer. Fixtures can be recessed. You can do a shorter grab bar if you want to play a game with that, but most people don't do that. They take that all the way across the wall. So you're going to do a 36-inch rear grab bar. Just remember the side one's going to be 42, the rear one's going to be 36. Okay? The maneuvering clearance in dealing with that, There's that 30 by 48 inch box outside of the clear floor space. Actually, the box could probably turn in this way too. So as long as you got that box in the clear floor space, you're good to go. You need the 5-foot turnaround still in a toilet room. You can go underneath the lav. The door always can swing into the clear floor space of a of the turning circle. Some of the space, same requirements apply for any design configuration. Again, dealing with the clear floor space area, trying to minimize it. The grab bars, we talked about that, the 2-inch grab bar, just doing that. Be careful about some of these. Some people try to get them a little bit further away. You don't want to do that because the 1.5 inches off the wall is a fixed number, and the logic behind it is if I'm holding onto the bar and I let go of it, my hand will stop. I don't go through there. So next time you go into the toilet, go into the accessible stall. Put your hand on the grab bar. Try to push your hand through. It's not going to happen. They've also clarified about things going above a grab bar and below. You need at least 1.5 inches clearance below the grab bar or 12 inches minimum above the grab bar. So when you're putting toilet paper dispensers, you can put them above a grab bar, but they've got to be 12 inches. Now, ANSI has this requirement for a vertical grab bar. ADA does not, nor the Florida Accessibility Code. So under Florida Accessibility Code, no vertical grab bar above the side grab bar. That is strictly an ANSI requirement, which guess what that means? If you're outside the state of Florida and you're using the International Building Code, you're going to wind up putting a vertical grab bar in. Toilet paper. It always used to be from the back wall to the outer edge of the toilet paper dispenser, 36 inches maximum. Now, the center line of the toilet paper dispenser is 7 to 9 inches in front of the toilet. Which now means you need to know how big your toilet is. Because toilets range from 25 inches, actually 25 1/4 to 29 5/8. How do I know that? I spent 4 hours on the internet measuring and looking at toilets. And it was interesting, they all come in different sizes depending on which one you specify. So be careful of that. The grab bar is 33 to 36 and it's measured now to the top of the bar. Used to be to the center, now it's to measure to the top of the bar. And the toilet paper dispenser, here's that 1.5 inches below or 12 inches above. Be nice, there we go. That's a problem because people have gone to the large rolls. I feel like the YMCA. Ready? Shall I make all the letters? Think about that because when the law came out in 1992, that was never there. They weren't even created. Now everybody's using them to save on the paper, and that blocks it. You've also got some other problems like door hardware and a few other things. They can go below the bar, but remember, from the back wall to the center line, 7 to 9 inches off the front of that toilet. The great one to do is if you can do the recessed one into the panel. Really works extremely well.
So those oversized ones usually have the dual rolls. That's a problem.
Well, the way the law says, it says you measure to the center line of the dispenser. So the question is, where do you measure? So I would kick it back a little bit just to be safe to be able to get that other one, but it says to the center line of the dispenser because you get the ones that are really oblong, you get the big round ones, they come in all shapes and sizes. So it gets very challenging. Also, to let you know, 2000 to 2012 Florida Accessibility Code has children's standards. They never were there before. So if you're dealing with a facility that's being like a daycare or depending on the schools or something like that, and you got children's, there are children's standards and requirements. So just take a look at that for your age groups. The urinal. Everyone wanted to know what an elongated rim was on the urinal. It's now defined as 13.5 inches. The maximum height of the urinal is 17 inches. I predict if I come to your office right now, you're drawing this urinal at 17 inches. Starting today, you're going to create the Larry Schneider Memorial Urinal. You're going to make it at 15 inches. Let me feel like a tall person, okay? If you drop it down to 15, you've already built in 2 inches of construction tolerance. It never said how low you could make it. It just gave you a maximum height. Build in your own tolerance. If you've given a construction tolerance of 2 inches, and the guy blows it in the field, I hope you go get it. Now, there's no requirement for grab bars at urinals. But in certain sports clubs and bars, it's not a bad idea at late at night at 2 o'clock. Okay? This is just a cluster of urinals, the lower one. I just like this. Progression. I like that low one down on the far left. Just shows nice. The buddy system, okay? Be careful when you go with your friend and don't turn and talk to him. Okay, why am I showing you bugs? Ladies, I apologize for this, but there was a national study actually done on this. There was a federal grant to do this. This was a study of urinals. And it's found out if there's a target at a urinal for men, the urinals and the toilet rooms stay cleaner. Guys, we just have to have something to aim at. Ladies, I apologize. It's a guy thing. I don't know what it is, but they did this large facility and they said they kept the place a lot cleaner. If you want to get fancy, we can go with these. The one on the far right, the Venus flytrap, is now $15,000 for a urinal. Could be something a little jazzy for your next project. You can turn this into art in public places. I don't know. Whatever you'd like to do. Lavatories. As I mentioned, the apron clearance underneath it was 29 inches. It's now gone to 27. And a parallel approach for kitchens, sinks in spaces without cooktops. So you can do a parallel approach, but it's a kitchen sink without a cooktop. Your removable cabinetry is allowed in dwellings, which we're not going to get much into. But again, we're back to that space again that you saw earlier. This 27 inches is now the magic number. Okay? Please, 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 stop specifying this lavatory. Why do you specify it? You open up the catalog, it's got the logo on it that says ADA compliant. I call it the medical lav. The disabled community absolutely hate it. It's so deep, it's 24 inches, it's a shallow bowl, the water splashes, all the stuff. You don't need to do it. They tend to be pushed off the wall because they're so far with the cantilever. Don't specify this. You don't need to do it. Okay, sinks, public common use and fully access in classrooms, 5%, research labs, break rooms, preschool, and work areas. Again, taking a look at what you do. Remember, there's lavatories and there's sinks. The difference, lavatories are where you wash hands. Sinks are where you wash everything else. That's good for your next trivia test. Okay, the standard stalls, we talked about that. Not Florida, but the federal, that's 60 by 60. Okay? You need the toilet diagonally across. This is from the ADA standards. That's so the chair user can get in here and maneuver around. Notice this has toe clearance because they got to swing their toes underneath to make that turn to get underneath there. You've got to make it bigger if you put full partitions in here. So be careful about that. It's just not 60 by 60 and full partition system all the way to the floor. Okay? The door, 4 inches off the corners. The end row, you can obviously take it down at the end. Now, lavatory in a stall. Stalls with more than one plumbing fixture shall be treated as a toilet room. Therefore, you need the 5-foot turnaround. It's hidden in the code. Try to see if you can find it, but it's there. Where 6 or more stalls are provided, now this is a change. In the old code, we had the requirement, if you have 6 or more toilet stalls in a toilet room, you need to make 2 of them accessible. A wheelchair one and an ambulatory one. They've now changed it. If you have 6 or more plumbing fixtures, toilets, and urinals. So let's say you have a men's toilet room, 4 toilets, 2 urinals. That's 6 fixtures. That means you need 2 accessible toilet stalls. The big one, the Florida big one, which is the size of this room, and then you need the ambulatory stall. So you're based on fixture count now. So that's really important to know. When you add those urinals in there, you got to take care of it. That's a big change. Here's the requirements. In new construction, the wheelchair accessible toilet compartment shall contain an accessible lavatory within it. 604.8.1.6 of the Florida Accessibility Code. Here's a little drawing to show you. Again, we recommend that you do 17 inches off the wall. You make sure you get this 60 inches off. The 85 inches is probably the minimum you can make this toilet stall. We recommend you make it 88 because it never seems to work out right. You know, give it some breathing room in dealing with this. So it's got 86 minimum clear is what we turned out when we started doing all the calculations on the math to get things to fit, and we recommend 88. So just be aware of this. The ambulatory stall, we talked about 35 to 37, depth of 60 inches minimum, door must swing out, which means also it needs an accessible stall, a toilet, the high one, and the door's got to be wide enough. Let's take a look at some toilets. Those of you who are in the military, you might remember these days. You'd all sit there and we'd pass the magazine back and forth. Okay, I've mentioned to you about that transfer. So here it is, an actual person actually doing it, making the transfer over, and that's why that lavatory is moved over there. You can have some interesting photos for your signage. Here we got walkers, crutches, and canes. Everyone does a different thing for the unisex toilet room. Here's a companion toilet, companion care toilet. If you notice, the family can go in there, chair user can go in there, babies can go in there. You can do everything in there except have a cigarette. So, what's going on? I want you to look at the sign. This is really a good sign. It's nice. It's clear context. Nice contrasting color. Everything's great. Here it is inside the room, not by the front door. Makes no sense to put it there. Okay, you don't put the baby changing station above the toilet on behind it. First of all, you can't even get to it to use it. You no, that's not where it goes. This one gets scary. The mirror's a little high for me. I'd never see the mirror. The grab bar, God knows what you can do with that grab bar to get to it. Just all kind of crazy stuff. No, you just don't do this unless you're into exercise. Then you can sit there and do 3 reps of 10 while you're sitting there. But no, you don't do this for compliance. Now, wall-hung toilets. If they're too low, you don't want to really tear it out to raise it up. What can you do? You can do this. Dealing with this, be careful with this. Now, I want you to be aware of, they make this with little extensions. So one of the manufacturers make this with a little extension, which means that seat stays still, which I think is a great idea. Otherwise, this thing rocks and rolls. Now, I'm not proponing this manufacturer. I just got this off the web and just said, look, here it is. Here's what they've got. They've got different things that you can buy them, and you can get them with all different heights of legs on the seat to do that. So there's an example of one. This is probably my favorite toilet room. There's a lav. There's a toilet. There's a toilet. There's a urinal. This is a toilet room with 2 toilets facing each other. Okay, this is in a public facility. It is built this way. We could go together. We could pass the drawings back and forth to each other, have lots of fun, and have a nice conversation. Actually, 4 of us could go. 2 on the toilet, 1 at the urinal, and 1 washing their hands, and you just kind of rotate around. You can take your whole bridge team in there. This was built for a reason, and the reason was there's a requirement in the law. There's talks about a piece where sometimes people have better access to transfer to the right than to the left because of their body strength. Now, I happened to go to the committee meeting that was dealing with this when they came up with this idea, and they said, well, we want to be able to do it both sides. I raised my hand up and I asked the question. I said, I hear what you're saying. I think it makes a lot of sense. If I can do better to the right, I can do that, but don't I eventually have to go back to the left to get to my chair? That's the last time I got invited to the meeting. So, toilet stalls. You know one of these papers has to work, right? One of them has to be right. Here we'll just take them and put them on a large bar, and you just kind of pick whichever one you want. If this one's empty, you just slide them down. This one I think is great. You take a number 10 electrical wire, attach it to the grab bar, and you can slide it any place you want. It will always be at the right spot. Not really supposed to do that. How tough are you really? Go ahead, try to use that one. That's my tape measure, I'm measuring a site. That's kind of scary. Okay, to get the toilet paper, you got to turn back around to the corner and go all the way around to do it. And then they got the high flush control and then the baby changing station and all this other kind of crazy stuff. The buddy system. I opened the stall door, this is what I saw. 2 toilets together. So you can go with your friend. Kind of scary. Okay, but now, we just added a grab bar because we're too far away. No, you move the wall over to take care of it. Plan ahead. Get your toilet paper before you sit down because you'll never reach it. All right? Does anyone have any idea why this is this way? Why is the grab bar at an angle? It's to hit the studs. That's why it got put in that way. Grab bars are supposed to be horizontal. Those of you who like pole dancing, you can use this one. You can practice your dance routine in the toilet. How about this one? Here's one with an emergency generator in there. Notice the clips here over here. So if you got a problem, we can jump start you. Kind of scary. Okay, here's one with a park bench inside, so we can all just sit down and wait for each other. And these are all actual photos, folks. Things that you find out there. Okay, built, constructed, occupied, being used. Anything wrong? Where's the toilet paper? It's over by the lavatory. No one ever caught it. You cannot, there's a certain state in the union that requires this guillotine grab bar on this side condition. But no, under the Florida Accessibility Code, you do not do that. Under the ADA, you do not do that. Here's that wall-hung toilet, okay? On the wall, it's built too far away. So instead of tearing all this out, build the wall out. Just add the wall. That way you get the grab bar and everything moved over. A lot more cost effective. You know, one of these dispensers has got to be right in here. Now, obviously you can't get to this guy. This is kind of crazy, all this, just it's like everything is jammed into here. A little overkill. Again, I talked to you about that 6 stall, the ambulatory one. You don't do the cage. Here's one that they did it. It was too wide, so they did this little filler piece over in here. So they were thinking about it, but it doesn't work. Now the problem with this is that for a person who uses the grab bar, they use the wall as to brace themselves. Now you're too far away. If you really want to do this, here's what we did on one project. We put 2 filler pieces on the partition system and then added the grab bar and get at least a minimum of 12 inches above. My recommendation, if you want to do that. Toilet stall. Nice little simple thing, a flat paddle. Makes it work. Lavatories, you can't put the legs underneath it. You can't get underneath it. You don't do the medical lav. Please. You don't need to do that. Tilt mirrors. Tilt mirrors went away in 1993. So stop thinking about tilt mirrors. They're gone. Baby changing stations, one of my little personal pet peeves. How do I access that? I gotta put my fingers in there and pull it down. Think about the closed fist, flaccid hand, operational. It doesn't work. So be very careful about the baby changing station you specify. The height of the baby changing stations, they now clarified that it should be at least maximum 34 inches to the top of the table. There were some questions on what to do. Bathing facilities. At least 1 shower or tub is required to be made accessible. So we got that transfer shower that we talked about earlier. 36 by 36. The grab bars are required around it. You need a clear floor space 36 by 48, at least 12 inches back behind the seat, so you can put your chair back and transfer over. Okay, this one doesn't work. It's on the wrong wall. Everything's backwards. All this plumbing should have been on this wall, the seat should have been on that wall, because there's my 12 inches. But plus the fact, if you really look at it, this is the shower out here. So it doesn't even, it doesn't even work even closer. The roll-in shower, you don't need a seat. You can do a roll-in shower with a seat, but then all your controls need to be over here, and you can't have a sink in here as long as it's a forward approach to get you underneath it. There's that magic 27 inches that you need from the back wall for your controls and everything. And again, like we talked about, you don't put it on the front wall because you can't reach it. You're allowed to do another configuration with a side approach like this as an alternate solution. So take a look at all the requirements for the showers in dealing with all of these pieces. The thresholds, you're allowed a little curve, basically a ½ inch. The trench drain is really a good way to do it if you're doing new construction. In fact, they stole that from the cruise ship industry. Most cruise ships, if you look at it, they have that trench drain there. Shower spray units and dealing with accessibility, the controls. The height of the bench, 17 to 19. Remember, and if you set it up on your drawings, draw it in at 18. Give that person a control. No, you don't do this and put the bar behind it on the seat wall. How do I even get to this guy? Can't do it. How do I even get to this guy? This is on the back wall. Non-compliant. Okay? This is too deep. This is way beyond the depth. This is like 42 inches, I think, or 48. I forgot what the dimension was. But again, this should have been on this wall, then it needs to be on this wall, and it's too deep. Non-compliant. Subtlety. Real subtlety now. We're getting to nuts and bolts. Shower control. Guess what that is? That's a knob. What does that mean? I got to twist it and grasp it. That makes it non-compliant. I see this 99% of the job times on the job sites. This is what gets specified. Non-compliant. Here's one that works. Slides up and down. Look where the bench is. To lift the bench up, you're going to hit the grab bar. The grab bar got put in too low. Tubs need the removable seats. Can be, or a fixed seat, as long as it's attached. Be nice. There we go. Or you can do the permanent seat at the end in dealing with that. So bathtubs, you got a number of different choices in dealing with accessibility. You got to make sure you got your clear floor space at that to have access to be able to get to it.
How do you get to the controls? They're on the other end.
You wheel up and turn everything on first. For a bathtub, it's okay. For a shower, it's not. Doesn't make a lot of sense at times. You're right. The question was about, for this, okay, I do the permanent seat here, all my controls are over here. So you got to turn everything on over here and then take it and go back, which means you're going to get a lot of things wet. Some accessible tub seats. There's one that drops down. Here's one at this end that drops down. Permanent one. This little stainless steel one doesn't work. Washers and dryers. You need one accessible where 3 or fewer are provided. You need 2 of them where there's more than 3. So washers and dryers are now covered. So be aware of that. Saunas and steam rooms need to be made accessible. And I need a compliant bench and a turning space in that sauna and steam room. Don't ask me about the metal chair going in a sauna. Okay? But you're going to have accessibility to those elements. Chapter 7 about the fire alarms and signs. When you have a fire alarm system, it needs to be compliant, audible, and visual in dealing with that. You go to NFPA 72, 1999 or 2002, which means the important part of this is you don't have to be at 80 inches above the floor. You can actually be in the ceiling now. NFPA 72 says strobe lights and horns can be in the ceiling. Big change. So that famous 80 inches that we all got hung up in Florida about, and which was on the old 1991 standards, it's gone. You can go with the new ones. The tones and the sound ratings, so you just go to NFPA 72, that's where you're going to find out your information in dealing with this. Signs. Signs haven't really changed, but they changed the height. It's basically 48 to 60 inches in dealing with the signs. You need the raised letters and you need the braille. Signs that identify permanent rooms and spaces. There's only 2 places, if I recall correctly, in the code that require you have to have a sign. One is at a toilet room, and the other one is at an exit door. All the other signs that we put up are just for people to get around. But if you identify a permanent room and space, then you need to have the compliant signage. Okay? Tactile and visual, these are like the examples in here. Visual only, visitors must sign in. Building directories, you don't need anything, just contrasting color and the size of it. So there's a whole bunch of requirements in dealing with the signage. 99% of the sign companies get this and nail this down pretty good and take care of it. How many of you guys check the braille when you go to the job site? Most of you look and see it's dots. Okay? I am finding out, I'm very surprised how many signs I am finding are wrong on the braille text. So learn some basic braille, men's, women's, restroom, stuff like that. Just learn a couple of basic ones. And it's scary that the braille I'm finding is wrong. The signage sans serif, the height is 48 to 60 as I mentioned earlier. You need it by the door. Again, here it is to the bottom of the text, 48 to 60, and the braille goes below it. And you need it spaced around there, 18 inches basically center line. You get the door outside the door swing. You need to get it be able to, again, the door needs to be able to open up and not hit you. Again, by the latch side. So a lot of that stuff hasn't changed in dealing with it. If you don't have the space, you can kick it over here on the other side, nearest adjacent wall. You got double doors, it's basically telling you to throw it on the right side. Now, another subtlety, signage. If the door is a push door, the sign can now be on the door. The sign could never be on the door because the issue was if the door opened, it would hit you in the face. Where did this come from? This really came from the hotel industry, because if you think about every hotel room, the doors open in. So now you can have the signs on the door if the doors open in, and they are not with a hold open device. In other words, the door permanently stays open. Okay, you got the pictograms, the requirements for that. All these pictograms for the restroom, stair, little different things in dealing with signage. Here's some examples of the international. There's a whole industry out there dealing with the international signs and what you need to do for accessibility. Characters, you can't get really crazy because people can't read it. I wear trifocals. I take these off, I don't see you. You're gone. I can't read a sign. Put these on, I can finally see again. So that's why they want nice, simple, compliant styles. Character height. Basically, we're talking about the 5/8 inch is normally in dealing with that. Contrasting colors. That's not good contrast, what you see on the screen. So you can do different things. It doesn't have to be just, buy one off the stock sheet. You can make them up to be nice and decent with dealing with that. Okay. Here's this facility. They got signs on every door. Your first reaction is, oh, you can put them on the door. Notice, all these doors swing out. So they're non-compliant. There's your braille, as I mentioned it. There's your sign for men, and there's your sign for women. Just take a look at that and know those. Get the sheets, because these are great little sheets here. Gives you all kind of little fun stuff to do with it. The numbers. It's kind of scary what we found. Telephones, volume controls on all phones. Need to have that. Detectable warnings, we talked about that. Only at the required at the certain areas for the DOT. Their requirements are the truncated domes. We won't get much to do. Assisting listening systems, assembly areas where you've got things going on, auditoriums. You need the assisted listenings, ATMs and fare machines, one of each type of location. A lot of them now, if you start looking at the ATMs, you'll see a little phone jack where people can plug in for a headset. Two-way communications, again, accessibility compliance. Specialty spaces, assembly areas, wheelchair spaces based on capacity. We're talking about what you got to do for the seating, assembly box and club seating. If you're into these kind of projects, yes.
Where do those seats have to be in an arena or something? I think a large Midwestern international design firm got sued because they didn't have them at all levels.
The question is where they need to be located. If you go into the text, they've now...
It's on the concourse.
Well, it's got to be... The question is, where do you got to put accessible seating if I do a stadium, let's say? It's all the different price levels.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest answer to tell you. And they all can't be in the end zone either. So you got to disperse them. You got clubs and club seats and, you know, sky boxes and stuff. Sky boxes are now accessible. You need to make them accessible. So it deals with a whole bunch of things. If you're dealing with this, take a hard look at the section. There's a clear floor space area for the requirements for, depending on how you're approaching it. A wheelchair seating, there needs to be a companion seat by every wheelchair seat. So every place there's a wheelchair seat, there needs to be a companion seat. There's an exception under 300 where you can cluster. Then they talk about where quadrants you need to get into. It's all cleared out where you've got to go. So if you're dealing with these kind of things, usually what you wind up in movie theaters is you do in the cross aisle. But you need to make the dispersion about where you're pricing. Take a look at your pricing seating. Assembly lines of sight, you got to be able to look over the person in front of you. If you're into a facility that you're going to have people standing up, this guy's got to go higher, like that. Let's go a basketball arena. A lot of times people are standing up for a lot part of the game. Well, for the wheelchair seating area, they need to be able to look over the person standing. So be careful when you're dealing with this kind of things. Requires horizontal dispersion and circling in or whole or part, and you got to move them all around and address the line of sight. So you really got to take a hard look when you start creating new arenas and stadiums. The dispersion we talked, again, just go into that section, take a hard look at dealing with it. Team places need to be, assisted listening systems depending on what kind of facility you're at, in courtrooms, and stuff like that. Signage needs to be provided to tell people it's there. Dressing and fitting rooms for lockers. Dressing rooms need to be made accessible. The requirement is to park by a bench. So if you're doing a retail store that has dressing rooms or a men's shop or women's shop, when you put the dressing room in, you need the 5-foot turnaround, you need to park by the bench. Kitchens and kitchenettes, there's a whole new section about the clearances and about the work surfaces and dealing with it. You can do a side approach allowed at kitchen sinks in spaces without cooktops. If you got a cooktop or a range, then you need to get underneath the sink. Transient lodging, go to the table. Just look at the count. Okay, and you got to deal with all that. Also, the requirement is all the doors in the non-accessible rooms need to have the clear width. It's not just the accessible rooms. Okay. Transient lodging, scoping applies separately to buildings with greater than 50 rooms per building. So it's going to give you more accessible rooms at a facility, depending on how many buildings they've got there. So again, take a look at this whole section dealing with their requirements for bulk areas. Bedside clearances, accessible routes, all of these things. There's a whole section in there dealing with the transient lodging for you to take care of these things. I need that space beside the bed. If I have 2 beds, I need the space between the beds, 36 inches wide basically, to get through it. Again, clear floor space to get me to the elements. Here's the closet, TV areas, so I need a turnaround in that room. Make sure I've got that covered. So you've got that. Housing places of education, they've covered all of that in dealing with when you're dealing with education facilities, dorms, what needs to be done for accessibility compliance. Transient versus residential. Florida, we have a lot of condo hotels. Well, you're a condo, you're a hotel, you're fair housing, you're ADA, you're Florida Accessibility Code. You need to meld them both. Take a hard look at that. And timeshares. Timeshares are both. Especially if it's an entity where I can go online and get it from anybody. The major chains all have these books that you can get. It says, where would you like to go spend your next week? Well, that means like I'm picking it. That makes it like a hotel because I'm picking the rooms. It's not like you and I just permanently have it. So that's timeshares. That needs to be done for accessibility. So you need to take a look at that. Medical care facilities. Turning space inside the room. Okay? You need to deal with what you need to take a look at if you're dealing with hospital works. And the dispersion for hospitals is dispersion per room type. Med surg, you know, pediatrics, all of that. Whatever your classifications are, you'll need accessible rooms to meet each classification in dealing with it. So take a look at that. There's some proposed guidelines going on out there about medical equipment, exam tables, etc., etc. Just to let you know, if you're dealing with a project, make sure you pass it on to your client to take a look at this. Detention and correction facilities, got to deal with those. Accessible cells. Again, a lot of this stuff is all these things are in Florida's requirements in dealing with this. Need that accessible toilet stall. Okay, visiting areas, dealing with that. Need to make those accessible so when you go visit someone, those need to be accessible. Courtrooms, very important for courtrooms to be accessible in dealing with those kind of facilities. You got different areas. You got the gallery seating, accessible seating. You got the witness stand, the jury box, judge's bench, clerk stations. All these public areas need to be made accessible. So a courtroom, again, the gallery seating, provide accessible seating area. The jury box, the witness stand, must be made accessible. So we got jury box. Make sure I've got the space for a wheelchair person to be able to park themselves there if they're selected for the jury. A good way to do it is take a ramp up, turning space, and getting access to it. So there gives you your turning space. If you can do this whole level on the ground too, just bring them right in. Okay, make sure that gate is open to be able to have access. The witness stand, you need access to a witness stand for accessibility. If raised, ramps are preferred. Here's a nice little simple one, brought in there, don't even know it's there. Ramps versus lifts, we recommend that you do a ramp because obviously a lift is a mechanical device and you can have problems with that. You look at the platform lifts, ASME A18.1, dealing with that, gives you some good information. The judge's bench, the workstations, including the clerks, you're allowed to make it adaptable, which means you can get something in there to make it accessible. Obviously, if you want to build it in ahead of time, it makes a lot more sense. But sometimes you talk about platform lifts and things going on to be added. The ramp or lift can be installed after construction if necessary space and electrical services provided, which is section 20624, but it's not permitted for the jury box or witness. That needs to always be made right up front. Judge's bench, you can adapt it. Here's a sample courtroom. You come in, got accessible seating, got a jury box, first level is down, second level is up, ramp up to the witness, judges, got a ramp in the back here, clerk area, ramp up. It just makes sense if you can build it all in ahead of time. There's a publication by the Access Board that was done in 2006 dealing with an advisory committee report on courtrooms. Transportation facilities, go ahead. Bus stops need to have the busing accessible. You need an access to the busing. Transportation facilities, all covered by DOT. Okay. Storage, lockers, 5% of your lockers of facility need to be made accessible. Okay, dining and work services. Dining and work services, 5% is required to be made accessible for accessible tables. The next one. The part is on the working services, you have a children's height, which can be lower for the kids. Sales and service counters, 36 to 34, depending on which one you want to go with. The sales and service counters usually are 36. Maximum height, and you got a depth in dealing with that. Benches in a locker room or stuff like that, you're dealing with the heights. The parallel approach, there's your parking by it, be able to get to it, and your depth of your bench, at least 42 inches wide, 20 to 24 inches in depth. So when you're dealing with those kind of things, take a hard look at what you've got to do. There's a lot of little pieces in there, a lot of subtleties. It's just going to take you time. I know you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. The end, or is it? Thank you very much. Have a great day. Good luck with trying to figure all this out. It's going to be fun for you. Enjoy it. Thank you.